probably some people will join. Thank you so much for your time and welcome to the workshop on property development. It is organized within the Property Development Network of YMCA Europe, which was created within Movement Strengthening Strategic Priority. We have decided that it will be really useful for us to organize a series of workshops from different national movements and to share the experience and best practices. And this is the second workshop, and we are very grateful that YMCA Ireland is ready to share their best practices today. John suggested that we can make a very short round of introduction, before. So could you please say your name and the organization you represent? And shall we start with you, dear Juan?
Thank you, Olga and John and Kenny. This is Juan from YMCA Europe. I'm speaking to you from Madrid, and very pleased and thank you for the initiative once again. Pleasure.
Thank you, Juan. Eglantina.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eglantina Lula. I'm from Albania, and I'm the executive director of YMCA here in Albania.
Thank you. Wojtek?
Hello, my name is Wojtek, and I'm from the Czech Republic, and I'm working here as a Secretary General.
Thank you. And Dorothy?
I'm Dorothy from YMCA Malta. I'm fundraising officer and community worker.
Thank you, Dorothy. Eddie?
Hi, everybody. Adi from Kosovo here. First week as the interim General Secretary, so that's why I'm looking tired. And here to learn more about property and what to do with the property we've just bought. So very interested.
And how to make the well.
Two wells. I don't want to correct you, two wells, but there you go.
Thank you. Claudio?
Hi, everybody. This is Claudio from Italy, from Sicily. Executive Secretary for the international projects. It's a pleasure to be here.
My name is Olga Lukina. I'm based in Brussels and working in YMCA Europe as Executive Secretary for Movement Strengthening. And I'm passing the floor to Kenny and then to John to introduce themselves, and the floor is yours. Kenny, maybe you will introduce yourself.
Hi, yes, Olga. So I'm Kenny Baxter, from Director of Greenhill YMCA, which is a centre, residential outdoor learning centre within YMCA Ireland.
Hi, I'm John Peacock. I'm the National Secretary of the YMCA in Ireland. I had previously I'll just say a little bit more, just by way of introduction to what we're doing today. I worked for the YMCA here in Ireland from 1985 to 95, when our residential centre that Kenny now runs was a small, we called it Youth Club in the Hills. And so over the past 25, 30 years, we've developed that to the residential and training centre that it is today. And so I was very glad then to come back in 2017 to return to the YMCA in the national director position, and supporting Kenny and the rest of the team and the work that we do. So I'll just carry on, Olga. Yes.
Yes. I just suggest we shortly introduce the rules. So it is better if we keep our cameras on and microphones off if we are not speaking. If there is a quick question for clarification, please put it on chat so we can ask it. But we will have time for questions after the presentation, and you will be able to voice them themselves or write them in the chat.
Okay, I apologise in advance for our Irish accents. If English is your second language, I apologise, and do put it into the chat if you're struggling to understand our accents. We, as I screen share, I won't be able to see the chat, but Olga will keep us right in terms of if people are struggling to pick up the accent or need me to clarify anything I've said. Because the other thing, someone particularly in the first part of the presentation, there might be some technical jargon that might need explained, so do feel free to ask. There's no such a thing as a silly question, particularly when you're operating on an international basis like it is. So I need to just share my screen so that you can see the presentation. So I think that this is really an important time to be discussing these issues, because I think that COVID has taught us many lessons, but one of those lessons certainly has been that we can't rely on charitable donations. That kind of direct funding from individuals certainly completely dried up for a majority of charities over that COVID period. And whilst some government support was there and remained, it still emphasised in other sectors that we can't depend on government funding either whenever things become difficult. So very much an appropriate time, I think, to think about how do we make our charities sustainable, and how do we use social enterprise to make that happen. There always is a challenge when we begin to think about these things, that how do we maintain true to our mission, and how do we maintain true to what we are here to do, as in how do we generate income whilst at the same time serving those people who we're here to serve. But I certainly think that it is possible. And it should always be seen that the social enterprise is here to give us funds to serve other people, not in any way to replace the core of what we do. So first of all, just to kind of define how I would describe social enterprise, it's receiving payment for services to make a surplus to support the charitable work that we do. We are obviously all, as charities, non-profit organisations, but that's not to say that we can't make a surplus. In fact, we need to make a surplus to be able to develop our services for the future and to provide for that central and administrative work that is so difficult to find funding for other ways. So I do think it's an absolutely vital part of what we do as a charity. It's not about funded projects, because funded projects, we generally receive money to carry out a specific project, and that money is restricted to that fund. So social enterprise is therefore very much about creating what we would describe as non-restricted income that is usable for the charity for the best interests of the main users of the charity in the best way that we see fit for that. Social enterprise can be in line with how we want to serve people through our charitable objectives or not. If, like I know the likes of Kosovo run a shop, for example, which is not in line with their direct day-to-day business, but we're quite liberty to do that, to provide funds for the charity. We have been very fortunate that in the main, the social enterprise work that we have done is very much in line with our charitable objectives. And so in general, there isn't that issue. Because if certainly, and this is where it becomes relevant to our legislation in this country, and obviously it varies from country to country. But if you are generating funds through a social enterprise that is not in line with your charitable objectives, then you may become liable for business rates, for value-added tax, and other forms of taxation like other businesses. There are a number of ways of setting up social enterprise. A trading company is one where you set up a separate trading company to the charity, specifically to run your social enterprise. Or increasingly here in Ireland and the UK, the idea of setting up a community interest company has also become quite an important way of doing this. It has a number of additional features where people can create an activity for community benefit and not for private advantage. Some of the ways that YMCA Ireland has developed these social enterprise are, and I've listed them here in the second slide. We provide childcare for parents and families and guardians, and we provide after schools clubs, again, to support families in this way. This has been quite a widespread use across the YMCA here in Ireland, and many of the young people benefit in both being able to attend that social enterprise style of a club, but then also there's the added benefit that many of those young people then return for our youth clubs in the evening. And so there's that double benefit, plus a triple benefit, I think, of that engagement with the wider family as well. Again, in a couple of locations in Ireland, we use gyms and develop physical fitness. So again, there's very much a double benefit here of being an income generator, but also it really supports our aim of providing health and well-being to young people in that piece of work as well. Again, training is another aspect that we have some elements of social enterprise in. We provide training for YMCAs within the movement, obviously, and we do that without charge. But we then also offer that training, and that can be training in youth work or safeguarding, childcare, all of those aspects, and we provide that at a cost to other people. We tender for services, and that can be a range of different services that we provide through government or private means, and again, a source of income. Almost every YM throughout Ireland rents out, not their whole building, but individual rooms within their YMCA. And again, this is a really valuable piece that is useful to bring in just income for rooms that may be used as youth centres in the evening, but during the day can be used for all sorts of other means as well. That was one aspect that certainly was hit, obviously, during COVID, where people were not renting rooms in that way. And the final couple of areas that we really operate as a social enterprise, and I think that's really important to think about this. We think about not being a social enterprise, but operating as a social enterprise in the sense of that we haven't set up as a social enterprise, but we run our charity to provide services. And the main way that we do that, we want to talk about today, is through providing residentials and through providing outdoor learning activities to a range of groups. I'd pass over to Kenny now to talk a little bit more about those groups that we provide those services to.
Thank you, John. So Greenhill YMCA, which is the centre I'm based in, it has really been operating as social enterprise for potentially for decades, and maybe at times the penny hasn't even dropped. That is actually what we were doing. We were providing our service that met with our mission, which was to provide outdoor learning residentials in our centre here. But the difference probably in our centre and the rest, most of the rest of the centres in Ireland, YMCA centres, was that we were generating our own income through young people and groups paying to use our facilities. We were providing the service, which, as I say, was what we set out as our mission, and we were funding that through young people paying fees. Now that evolved over the years. A significant percentage, going back a number of years, we would have received a significant percentage of funding from government bodies, etc., to do that. But as that dried up, we became more and more self-sufficient and generating more and more of our unrestricted funds through groups paying. So the groups, the top four in that list on the PowerPoint, certainly we have been working with for many years. School groups are probably the bread and butter of our midweek work and income, since we're talking about income. So they would be primary schools, secondary schools, really all ages, and even into university as well, using our centre to come along on residential. And usually we would provide a program, not always, but usually we would provide an outdoor learning program. So of course we need a big team to do that, and we need extensive facilities, which I'll talk about in a moment. Also then youth groups who would use us, and many of those would be the church and faith, from the church and faith community, but not only. We'd have young groups from inner city, etc. And they would use us mainly at weekends, along with some community groups who would be, some of those would be adult, but very few. We've stayed almost exclusively with young people. Again, we have been fortunate in that we have been able to stay very strictly within the mission of what we're about, which is working with young people. So we haven't moved so much towards adults. The development of me in the last few years has been more and more sports bodies coming through, some professional sports bodies like football teams, etc., wanting to use us for the facilities we can provide and for the different experience from them staying in a hotel, etc. And the other is the corporate groups, which we have tinkered with over the years, but done very little work with them, in a sense, because we had a model that worked with the young people, and we wanted the young people always to have priority to our facilities, access to our facilities. Corporate groups will pay more, and it is attractive, and I think we will probably, as COVID has challenged us, we will probably move a little more towards corporate groups. But again, that's the freedom of maybe what John's been saying there, which has been coming more and more in light for us, and that is that we can do some work outside our mission, provided that's supporting the work in our mission. And so maybe move on to the next slide. So when COVID struck, it really challenged us, because for the very fact, maybe I didn't give percentages, but probably 90% of our income was coming, and potentially more, was coming through youth groups, staying residentially, and some coming in for days as well to do activities with us. You can imagine that was just switched off on the day COVID struck. We have a significant staff team. We had about 16 to 18 staff members and a big full-time volunteer team that lives with us from from around the world. Maybe that's the time to plug if you have young people who want to spend a year in Ireland in a nice, exciting environment. Do talk to us, because we take about 16 young people per year to stay with us for a year. So we had this huge resource that was obviously costing large amounts of money to sustain, and our income had completely dried up. Probably maybe the downside of being almost exclusively social enterprise was when that dries up, there's nobody there to assist us. So we had to really think about how we would go forward. We have our centre is a 180 bed. It has developed into that, obviously, over the years. 180 bed modern residential centre with good facilities. It's got a floodlit sports pitch. It's got various activity resources around. It's got a climbing tower, etc. So we had to think, how do we use this at this time when we're in lockdown? So we saw the opportunity of family holidays. Families were able to go on holidays still during a certain period of COVID. So we opened up the little cabin you see there. We have a number of those cabins, and we opened them up for the first time ever to family holidays. We also done work. This was not to generate income. In fact, we didn't get any income for it, but it was because we had the facilities. We had furloughed. I'm not sure if that term means something to you, but our government put in place a system where people should stay at home and receive 80% of their income to stay at home. So we lost our staff team through that, but it was financially a saviour for us. But it left us with there was one or two of us still around the centre, and we had this big facility available. So over the years, we had built up strong relationships with the Health Trust, working with young people with additional needs. And I think maybe the lesson here was that very often our social enterprise work has came out of relationships, maybe things we have done voluntary for groups, and they have come back to assist us at other times. So the Health Trust had lots of young people in care and a real problem during COVID. So we opened up our centre, and they brought just one young person every day throughout lockdown to spend time in this space and give a family a break. That then developed as COVID eased up into a very strong, exciting relationship for the future, where they've developed into, in fact, the cabin you're looking at, they have taken it over permanent, on a semi-permanent basis, like full time now. They pay us handsomely because it's really important work, and that we're supporting them in, and they really don't have facilities for this elsewhere. So this is generating a significant amount of our income at the minute, this one cabin. And that's just going to be extended to 2 cabins. So it's been really, really important for us. We also, again, through connections on our members of our national executive, etc., who had connections into fostering network, we ran a summer camp again during lockdown. This was supported that young people who were on the edge of care needed additional support, and they were allowed to attend summer camps, etc. Coming through then towards this summer, we probably stepped even more outside the box, and given we still had no income coming through our traditional, the 90% or 95% of our income that had been wiped out, we were just, none of it was there. So we had to do things to keep our team going and to keep funding the centre. So we stepped outside the box a bit with an opportunity to take over the Petallow Swans. We are situated in a significant seaside resort in Northern Ireland, and we were given an opportunity to take over these swans. And that came with its risks. It came with it was completely new area for us, and we had to do a fair bit of not just estimates but guesstimates about what we could generate income wise, etc., and had we the resources to deliver it. So we ran the swans all summer. About 25,000 people sat on swans while they were in our charge, and we generated a very significant income during the summer, even after we had met our costs. And that was a big success that will develop, I believe, and may extend further in the incoming summer than just the Swans. We may do other work in this same seaside resort in the centre of it. We've also continued, just as COVID struck, we had really cut the sod for a new building. It was just beginning the build. That building continued throughout COVID, and it's, I suppose, ironic that we were in worrying times and difficult situation, and yet this fantastic building was going up in our midst. And I'm wondering, do we move on to the next slide at this point? I think John and me are probably going to work together on this.
Yeah, I've flicked onto the new slide. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yep.
And I think that's the important thing. I think it's a learning for us as we think about social enterprises, that you can never afford to sit in your hands. And you know, many certainly youth centres and youth provisions in Ireland were well protected by the government during the lockdown, and were able to change their services on to delivering their services via Zoom or other online means. But obviously an outdoor centre can't do that, and it needs to have that direct engagement. So we did during that year build this community hub. You'll see the picture of it there, and certainly we'll look forward to Erie coming over and viewing it in person as they build their new centre in Kosovo. And we also took then the opportunity, that centre when we originally envisaged it was for the use of groups who would come and stay at Greenhill. But in the light of COVID, it really helped us to expand our thinking around that, so that, for example, rather than the swimming pool just being sitting there for use of groups who came to stay at the centre, we have really developed that out to allow swimming coaches in the local area to come and hire out that swimming pool and to provide swimming lessons to young people. We have rented out the large room that's there for conferences. And that again has been successful as people begin to meet face to face. And our next stage is that we hope to slowly develop a coffee shop aspect to this building as well, whether that be young people or adults arriving to walk up the mountains, or whether that's parents dropping off their kids to go to the swimming pool, that they can come in and use the other side of the building as a coffee shop, and we would have a video link so that they can watch their kids enjoying themselves in the swimming pool while they enjoy a cup of coffee on the other side. Anything else, Kenny, you would like to add to this? Like, this is a £1 million investment that we've put in, and that, I guess, is really important. I think there was a question asked earlier about what do we do with the money, or how. The key part of social enterprise is that you invest back into your business, and that can bring in other matching funding as you go forward. Kenny?
Yeah, I suppose one thing I would add from one of the previous slides, I was thinking there that I did talk about the new initiatives that we began with COVID, and I told you about the successful ones, but it's probably worth mentioning that we did sit down as a team and we came up with probably 15 to 20 ideas of how would we get through COVID here. What would we do? What sort of work could we do to generate income? And probably less than half of those ever got even to the planning stage, and probably 25% of those that got to the planning stage didn't get any further. And we commenced with a number of different initiatives, one being a club for young people, one being after schools activities, etc. And a number of those didn't go any further, although they're still there, and we may revisit them. But so I suppose what I'm saying, it's probably important to say, is that I highlighted the Swans, which were highly successful, and that work with young people with additional needs. But we did have lots of I wouldn't call them failures. I'm trying to think of another way of putting it. Attempts that didn't take off. And I think that's probably inevitable. And I think we found that all through the years at Greenhill, is that we've tried to be ready and prepared to not say no immediately to new initiatives and opportunities, even though the initial reaction might be, oh, we can't do this. We've looked at them, and of course most we can't do, but there's often one or two there that can develop into something very exciting and very very important to our sustainability.
And it's worth saying that is challenging for staff. Kenny and I are starters, we're innovators, and we're keen to try new ideas, but you always have to be aware that many of your staff are not that personality type and find new things and change really difficult and challenging. And there is a key piece around that of bringing staff and volunteers with you so that they really understand what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you're doing it, because change is difficult for many of us. How does the future look then in terms of for sales? We certainly do hope that we will return to that kind of 95% of our normal business that Kenny talked about in terms of schools and youth groups and community groups reusing the centre. But we also are in the process just of developing a health and wellbeing centre down in our local town as well. It really is a reflection of COVID. We see that as being a major part of our mission to support the mental, spiritual and physical well-being of young people. But there is also a social enterprise element to that too, where people will pay for services, and indeed that doctors will recommend people to come to those type of centres rather than just issuing them with drugs or whatever. We'll develop the work with the Health Trust, as Kenny has said, to work with additional young people, but also to support their families. We're also investigating, looking at providing further services to refugees. You know, it's an issue throughout Europe, and we do feel a real sense of need to provide some of the residential accommodation that we have to refugees. But and then finally, because we're in a part of Ireland, our centre particularly in Newcastle is right on the moorings and right in the sea, we're keen really to develop our work in the recreation and tourism business. So I'll finish with that plug. If any of you want ever to come and visit Ireland, you'd be very welcome to say at the Greenhill or at our other centre in Newcastle.
And maybe also just worth saying with regard to the future that we have done some strategic thinking and some sums around. We are confident now, given the number of new initiatives that have taken place, that if and when we get to the other side of the impact of COVID, where I listed we were 90% plus of our income was generated through residential outdoor learning work. We reckon that is up to more like 50%, because there have been so many new initiatives that have come on that are going to replace some of that. And the impact of that for our work is that we believe that we can reduce the numbers participating in our residential programs, and the quality can go up, and yet we can still be sustainable while we get involved in other important pieces of work. So really, where COVID has taken us, it's been an awful way to journey there, but it's taken us to, we believe, a better place.
As one of our staff coins, quite often she'll say we've got to work smarter rather than work harder, and I think that is a good watchword for us all. I think it is challenging times we're in, but as Kenny has said, I really think that it's a real opportunity for us to do new things in new ways, and to be providing for young people's mental physical and spiritual well-being, which is our core mission, but at the same time doing that in a social enterprise approach that can support the organisation as well. So it's not an either or, but rather a both and. Eddie has a comment. Eddie.
It was just because it's being recorded, and whoever hears this, it might help, because it's just from experience. Obviously, you alluded to the shops that we opened in the vein of social enterprise. So one of our shops has run 8 years, and we've opened another 2 this year. So the model does work. But one thing we've noticed in the current climate, and it depends on your country, is that if you're able to pull in those funds for a startup or for supporting certain, how to say, people in terms of maybe helping getting women back to work, or helping young people access job opportunities, we found that we can, if you have the social enterprise and you apply for grants, they can carry a lot of the costs that will maybe make your margin even better. So in our sense, we've got like a year's rent paid to get it right, and a year's salary to get it right, and some initial startup costs. So we found that model, by having somebody survey the kind of, I guess, the green agenda and also the employment agenda within countries, you're able to leverage costs and have more of that money go into unrestricted, as you mentioned, John, where you can perhaps start something else up, or keep another member of staff or other things. So just about leveraging what you've got against incoming funds, especially green agenda and employment, to make sure more of that money comes into the core of the organization rather than just into the night. So there you go. I hope that makes sense. Into the night, that doesn't even make sense, but you know what I mean. Just spend it.
Yeah, no, it's very useful, Lady. Another piece I would add to that is that we have just in a number of centres employed young people through a Job Start programme, which is a government-funded programme, so they can work in shop, as an example of you, Eddie, but also can work in our kitchen, or help us support and provide services. So you're fulfilling your mission in the sense of that those young people are receiving training, they're receiving employment, and they're receiving support and mentoring, but they're also helping us by making our charity viable as a business too. Currently, Olga's asked how many do we employ. We have reduced staff as a result of COVID, but across centres, in Ireland, we employ about 100 people in various ways.
Yeah, thank you so much for the information. And Eddie, thank you so much for the comment, because I think that for the social entrepreneurship, this is a crucial approach, yeah, how to combine business with real social work. And I think that this example illustrates how business can create a very good social environment in the community. And the floor is open for the questions. You can voice them or type.
Just while people are thinking about a question, that like the term was used here was staycations, where many families and young people couldn't go away to other countries due to COVID, and that was, as you saw, one of the things that we used to our benefit to open up our cabins for families who would normally have gone off to join Juan in Madrid. Had to stay at home, and so we provided accommodation for them as a part of our social enterprise while they had to stay home. So I do think what is really important is that kind of being innovative in terms of thinking and taking up opportunities as what appears challenges can become opportunities for income.
Wojtek?
Yeah, I have a question regarding the new community hub. Is it your property? Yeah, it's your property. And
Yeah.
where did you get the funds for building this hub?
Yeah.
Was it your money or some rent or loan?
It's we have been very fortunate, Wojtek, to have it at this point 100% funded. The core fund came from a government grant, which was a fund towards rural development, developing buildings in the countryside. So that created 50% of the required money. And we then pulled together small grants due to Kenny and a couple of other guys who just went out and looked for money from all different sources. And then we contributed just about between 10 and 15% will be the final kind of figure that we as the YMCA through generated income provided to it. But it's been great to have that building now sitting fully funded. Kenny, do you want to add into that? You were directly involved.
Yeah, I mean, all the development that's taken place at Greenhill, really, I should say, has all been more or less 100% funded, and we've had probably over 10 to 15 years, we've had about £3 million spent. So we have been fortunate, great help from Europe, I have to say, and also, you know, various peace funds, etc. We were quite involved in peace building work, and lots of other trusts and sources. So we have not, we could not have developed the centre we have. I guess the money from the social enterprise was keeping our core running costs on, and then every opportunity we got, maybe it was once every 5 years, maybe every decade, we saw an opportunity for a substantial amount of funding towards significant development on the site. We snapped that up each time it was available.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and there is a question in the chat connected with this, with the same topic. What kind of support does your government offer for the social business opening? Because in Albania, government supports for the health insurance only for maximum 2 or 3 employees, if they are employees with disabilities, and it lasts maximum for 1 year.
We do get, when I say we are completely self-financing, there is an indirect support comes through government support for youth groups and schools, etc. So, you know, some of the income we generate is coming indirectly to us via government, but those people can go anywhere with spend that money, and we have to attract them towards us. The government has been, to be honest, probably I think Northern Ireland, we are situated in Northern Ireland, has been in a very beneficial position because Europe and the International Fund for Ireland from America, various bodies because of the conflict have supported us. I don't know if that's been replicated in Kosovo, for instance, but I think probably many countries would be envious of the amounts we've been able to generate for capital works. I don't know if that answers it, John.
I think it answers the first half. Tina, do you want to explain the second half of your question? I'm not just sure what you mean.
Yeah, I think that this is an example of different social and economic and legislative norms in different countries, that in some countries it is much more difficult to receive the support from government to such cases. Yeah, Glentina is agreeing with me. Eddie, do you want to voice your question yourself?
Yeah, I think maybe John, but I'm sure Kenny can have an opinion on this as well. We're one of the things we've identified is children's work, children's clubs, childcare, and it's one of the things that where we live, people would pay a lot of money for private courses or just childcare in general. But we just have this awful feeling that as with retail, when we set off down that road, it's it could be the size of our organization just to run that as a department in terms of childcare and standards and money you've got to put into it. So just hoping maybe from YMCA Ireland experience to just share a little bit about, is it worth it? What has that journey been like? Because I think in most countries, parents will always going to pay for children to do extra things. But in terms of, does that become its own beast? Of course, how you run your mission through that, and is it worth it in the end? So I think us with shops, we learned that it's not about having a shop, it's about the number of shops and their location before it becomes worthwhile to do that. So again, just some insight onto your childcare experience, I guess, would be useful.
Yeah, certainly I would say it is worthwhile to do it. A number of local YMCAs have started up childcare over recent years. Other YMCAs have been doing it for quite a number of years now. And it really does become a valuable source of income that, as you say, some families obviously need childcare, need provision to as they're attending work and will pay to do that. It does also, I think, make it very worthwhile because you can then subsidize places for other children who, for whatever family circumstances, can't afford normal childcare, and so it really ties into a mission whenever you're able to provide support to other families who are really in need. And that can be, that can be all sorts of circumstances. It can be, a recent situation, a father died in a family, and we were able to continue to provide that childcare to the mother and to the child as well. So I think it's really good. I think it's like any business model, it's difficult. One of the major challenges that's really important to set up from the outset is dealing with bad debt. And that's been a challenge for all the centres who do it. And that again is that balance, because we are a charity, we want to provide for families who are in need, but we have to treat it fairly and treat everyone the same. And that does mean that there is difficult pieces in terms of chasing bad debt. Where it has worked most successfully is where our YMCAs have linked with local schools, so that the local school then is recommending or even is in partnership with the YM to be providing after schools services for young people. And that works much better than, I think another place we've tried models where you go into schools and provide a club for a short-term basis or an activity. That doesn't work so successfully, I don't think. Parents and guardians need to know that it's a consistent thing that will be happening every day of the week, that they know reliably that there'll be somebody at the school gate to pick the kid up in a van or to walk them to the YMCA, and that has to happen every day. That 360, well, every day they're at school anyhow. Yeah, for sure.
So something we have found a challenge around charging, etc., and we haven't cracked it, although we're maybe getting better at it, is, we're very much part of the community here, very connected in our local town and connected into areas of disadvantage, etc. And as we've moved into this area, it's become a challenge to charge enough money of those that have it, of those that can afford it, because we're sort of shocked at what some people out there, like if we provide a conference room, do we charge everybody a small community rate, or do we charge what the local hotel is charging for exactly the facility? And that's a very difficult balance, because you want to make sure it's affordable to everyone, but you also don't want to be used in a sense by affluent organizations who can afford it, who think, oh well, it's the YMCA will expect to pay 10% what we pay in the fancy hotel down the road, the same thing. So there's a whole dilemma there about how we manage all that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Juan, do you want to voice your question?
Yes, very briefly. Thank you so much. And we have had information about Green Hill over the years. When I was at YMCA Spain, we had groups and volunteers at camp. It was an amazing experience. So it's so good to reconnect and to listen to developments which are fantastic, really inspired, very concrete clues that you are giving us. My question would be more about, in your opinion, what would be the basic structure that you need in a center like this, and how to separate the staff with projects, with the programs, with the the financial staff or the administration focused staff, and if this depends on the national center itself or it's managed by the national level of YMCA Ireland. What would be the 2-3 key staff that you have at the center?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Juan. And like the Green Hill Centre is part of the national movement, and that does then provide that wider support around personnel and training and those wider administrative financial supports to the centre. In terms of the centre itself, then I think whether you're a charity or social enterprise or whatever, people expect the highest level of service. So the key staff, I think, in terms of the departments that we have a centre staff who focus on the outdoor learning activities, and whilst those volunteers that you mentioned, Juan, come, and if you came to the centre on a day-to-day basis, they would be the people you would see them doing the activities. But we have a team of professionals there who are constantly training those volunteers to the highest level. We have a kitchen staff who again will provide food to the highest level as well, and then a domestic and cleaning staff that cleans and maintains the building and the centre and the grounds to the highest level as well, because I think that is key. That people's expectations are very high and expect everything to be of the highest standard across the board. Kenny, you'd like to add that?
No, I think, and I'm only connecting now again, Juan. I'm only realising that the connection now. Good to see you. Yeah, I mean the front of house. I didn't pick up the entire question, but most of the front of house operation, as in the people, guests who come, that's almost exclusively our international volunteer team. People 18 to 25 from around the world, many of them from YMCAs, who are backroom staff, if you like, train them up, and I'll not repeat what John said, but they're the front of house, and they have incredible energy and enthusiasm because they're with us for a short time and they're here to do a certain task. So again, that's an important part of our model. And now people think volunteers, of course, are free to you at anything but, there's a lot of effort, a lot of training, a lot of resources go into keeping them there, but it is definitely a more affordable way for us to deliver a really good service is through those guys.
Yeah, there is one more question in the chat from Glantina about the markets and strategies which you are using.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, Glantina, because our primary marketing strategy, and we make no apology about this, is word of mouth. And it's so important again that everyone who comes to the centre has a really positive experience. And we're glad to say that 99% of the people do, because that is our best strategy of people coming, having a good experience, and then recommending that experience to others. Yes, we do all of the usual stuff through social media and brochures and different things. But to be honest, that is and remains that word of mouth, and that happens in two ways. Is that for many schools and youth groups, as soon as they leave one year, will book in for the next year, because they've had that really good experience and want to make sure that they get that same weekend or that same week the next year. But
and pre-COVID,
sorry, I just finish off again and then I'll come back to you. And then just that they do go away and tell their friends and families and others, youth leaders and teachers, about the really positive experience that they've had. Sorry, Ken.
yeah, I was just going to say that pre-COVID, and for years and years before that, pre-COVID, we had 10,000 young people per year who would use our facilities either residentially or for day activities. And if you think in Northern Ireland, which is where the vast majority of our business, if you like, comes from, there's only 2 million people. So you don't have to do the sums very quickly to see how 10,000 arriving each year. It gets us very well known throughout the wider national community. So that has helped us as well. I think that's the word of mouth and we've been here for a very long time.
Yeah, my question is connected with Eglantina's one. So definitely your services are relevant if people are using them for many years. So do you have any strategies how you annually probably assess which services are relevant? How do you understand which services to provide and which not?
I think one of the ways, certainly every group that comes does an evaluation of the services that we provide at the centre, and that gives really important feedback to the centre. We also are in the midst, as in the same way as YMCA Europe is, YMCA Ireland is in the midst of a mission, vision and strategy period, and Greenhill and our other aspects of the work will all be part of that and feed in to where we see that going forward, so there's a full consultation happening with our users, with young people, with staff, and with our boards of management across the island of Ireland to ensure that we are relevant to the needs.
Yeah, thank you so much. I see that our time is coming to the end, but maybe for the very end, like some summarizing question. I know that in YMCA umbrella, there are many organizations which are just starting social entrepreneurship as a way of providing services. And I know that they are very good in social work and project management, but they feel not very confident in the business part, because this is somehow what YMCA-minded people are not really skilled at. What would be your recommendations for such organizations? Like, what approaches to choose so to enter this sphere without having these hard skills, I would say?
One thing I would say, other than listening to what I answered a little bit time ago there as well, what we're about is serving people, serving young people, and we do that to the best that we can. Whenever people pay for services, they expect the best service, but I don't think that's a challenge, because that's really what's at the heart of what we do anyhow. So obviously there's lots of governance, lots of backroom stuff that has to happen, and lots of skills that need to be there. But if our heart and mission is to ensure that every young person, every user has the best possible experience, then that applies whether we're running it on a purely charitable basis or whether we're running it as a business.
And I think there can be, and I guess maybe most centres are doing the likes of this, but there's very simple ways to dip your toe into it, if you use that phrase, into the water. Like, I know a few YMCA centres here will run birthday parties, for instance, as a social enterprise, which is it's a very legitimate way where you're working with the young people that the clientele that you're used to working with, you know what you're doing, and yet there's an income being generated. And so there's various things, I think, at that level that can be a way to get started and expand out further. Yeah.
And I think that in line with that too is that people, as Kenny said earlier, shouldn't fear something not succeeding. We very much value ourselves as a learning organisation, and we interpret it that way, that everything we learn from, and sometimes the ways that we learn best are the things that haven't worked out, and we learn from those best going forwards.
Indeed, learning by doing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So I suggest I'm looking at the watches and see that it's time for us to finish. Thank you so much, dear John, dear Kenny, for this very informative presentation and for answering all our questions. And I really hope that next month we will meet again, and there will be an organization who will provide the workshop. If this organization is here, please let me know. It will be great support for everyone.
Thank you.